Hey guys, this is Owen at Cafe de Paraiso. We are a social impact, sustainable specialty coffee roasting company based in Las Vegas, Nevada. We sell our coffees online at cafedeparaiso.com, and for every pound of coffee we sell, we donate $1 to education charities, and we ship all over the U.S., all 50 states, and we would love to get your business and help be the change with you. Today, we are going to show you how to make coffee with a French press. French press is a very common way to make coffee at home. You'll find French press at a lot of coffee shops, and it's very simple, very quick way to make coffee. There's a little bit of cleanup after the coffee is made, but for people on the go, for someone who wants to make coffee really quick, French press is a really great system to use. So typically, the French press consists of two parts. There is the container where you fill up the container with coffee and water, and then you have the plunger. The plunger is also the filter that is used to separate the coffee from the water so that when you drink it, you don't get those coffee grinds inside your cup. So to use a French press, all you have to do is you just need a couple things. You need your coffee, which you should always grind coarse. If the French press is using a metal filter, which is very common, so you want to grind it coarse so that when you do the pressing action, which is like this, you're pressing down, you're separating the water that has coffee in it from the water that has no coffee grinds in it. So that way, again, you've got that clean cup of coffee, but as you're pressing, you don't want those chunks of coffee to get up inside there into the coffee you're actually drinking, and that's why we do a coarse grind for French press. So I already have my coffee pre-ground right now. I'm also going to stir the coffee once I add the coffee and the water, and that's to make sure all the coffee is immersed. A lot of times when you have a fresh roasted coffee bean, there's a lot of gas that escapes, and you'll have coffee beans that'll still be floating at the top of the coffee. So to stir it up after you pour in that water really helps to get all the coffee immersed so you get a more accurate brew. I also brought with me a scale, and I have a timer. Timer is most important because you don't want to over brew the coffee or under brew it, and as you time it, you can then, over time, tweak the amount of time you want to actually have your coffee sitting there and find that ideal brew time, which might be a little more or less than 4 minutes. 4 minutes is kind of a good benchmark to start with. And then I have my coffee cup, of course. So the beans we're going to use today, these are really special beans. They're from a region in Ethiopia called Yirgacheffe. And there's a town right next to that also called Wanago. These beans are extraordinary because they actually have a very, very fruity, very strong blueberry flavor. I have friends who've tried this coffee and they say it's a blueberry extravaganza. So I highly recommend you try these coffees. This one in particular is really, really fun. Not a lot of people have ever tried coffees that have a very strong fruit or let alone blueberry flavor. So you guys have to try this. Oh my goodness. So it smells amazing. The other thing that's important too is that you try to brew your coffee with a fresh grind. So usually you'd want to grind your coffee at least 15 minutes or less before starting the brew. So I've already weighed this out. I'm doing 34 grams, and I'm doing a ratio today of 1 to 18. So that's 1 gram of coffee for every 18 grams of water, which I think comes out to about 618 grams total of water. So that's where my scale comes in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this French press on top of my scale, and that way as I pour in the water, I'll know exactly how much water I've added in ratio or proportion to these grinds. Now, if I already have done this many times, if this is my normal morning routine and I've already pre-measured these out, I'll probably just remember exactly where on the French press I'd already filled it, and then you don't need to use the scale after that. So, but for right now, and for purposes of demonstration, I'm just going to use the scale. I've got my coffee grinds. You can just add those straight in there. All we're going to do is we're going to put in that coffee, and we're just going to add hot boiling water. So I'm going to boil my water again. This is already kind of preheated. When you add the water, you're also wanting to try to be consistent with the temperature. So typically with a coffee, you'd want a coffee, the water to be around 200 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe a little bit less than that. So the way that I try to calibrate that with my hot water kettle here is I wait until after it's finished boiling, and then until the surface of the water is stopped bubbling. And I can tell that with this one because I can feel when those bubbles are, moving around inside that coffee, that water kettle. So it just stopped there, but it's still right now bubbling really violently, so I want to wait until that's calm. And that's just to get a consistent temperature. And if I wanted to tweak that, I could then change the amount of time I wait until after the water is calm, or I could try to pour it in while the water is still boiling. Boiling points of water also change based on your altitude or elevation, so feel free to obviously make your own adjustments at home. So now that I've got my hot water, I've got my grinds in here, I'm going to turn my scale back on, make sure it's zeroed out, and then I have my timer, and this is going to help me know how much time the coffee grounds have been exposed to the water. So I'm going to go ahead and pour in, start my timer. I'm going to pour in about, we're going to do about 200 grams of water here, and then I'm going to stir this up. I'm going to use my chopsticks. You could use chopsticks, you could really use anything for this. The idea is that what you're putting in isn't cooling off the water. So I'm going to stir this up pretty good. My goal here again is to try to get all the grinds exposed to that hot water. That helps get the gases that are sitting inside fresh roasted coffee to come out. And as long as that gas has come out and come to the top, then it's not going to make so many of the grinds float up to the top and not actually get fully brewed. So now that I've done that, I'm going to fill up the rest of this. And I'm going to go up to my 618 grams. So we're at 550, 600 grams. There we go. We're right at about 620, 622. And then what I'm going to do, just to prevent heat from escaping and kind of get that brew to, stay hot, I'm just going to put this on top. I'm going to let my timer sit. We're going to let that brew for about 4 minutes, and then we're going to press and pour out the coffee. So that'd be a good time to pause. So while you're waiting for your French press to brew, what's nice about this is you can do other things in the morning. You could make your breakfast. You could, if you have kids, you could get them ready for school. It's kind of nice, but it's important, again, to time this right so that you're not overbrewing the coffee. So you can have your timer set so that after that, 3.5 to 4.5 minutes that you've brewed the right amount of time, and then you can press when it's ready to go. So now we're at 2 minutes. This would be a great time to, think about all the ways that the coffee that you're drinking is going to be making the world a better place. Our coffees, we use a biodegradable bag, so the goal here is to try to use the most sustainable packaging possible. This bag happens to have a degassing valve, which is made out of plastic. That's the only part that's not biodegradable. We may also start using coffee bags that don't have that so that they're actually 100% biodegradable. Right now we use these degassing valves so that if we're mailing the coffee beans after they're freshly roasted, that the bags don't explode because of all of the degassing that coffees do in the first few days after they're roasted. The other thing that's great about our coffees is that we try to source them from sustainable farms. This coffee is from Ethiopia, and something interesting about Ethiopia is because a lot of the farms there are very small farms, single-family properties with maybe only about 1 or 1.5 hectares on average for a lot of those single-family coffee farmers. It's hard for them to afford to do an organic certification, so you usually only find organic certified coffees from Ethiopia when they come from a single estate that has enough land and a single process that then can be more easily inspected and certified. So a lot of coffees, and actually what I've heard from an importer or exporter in Ethiopia, is that all coffees from Ethiopia are actually organic naturally, meaning that those farmers don't actually use any chemicals in their farming process. No pesticides, no herbicides, and no added fertilizers. And I think part of that, it makes sense because the coffees in Ethiopia, the plant actually grows indigenously there. A lot of people say coffee was first discovered in Ethiopia. So it makes sense that if the plant grows naturally there, you don't really need any additives to help those coffees grow. So in Ethiopia, the exporter that I met with, where this coffee was exported from, he said that actually all coffees in Ethiopia are organic, but they don't have that organic certification because the individual farmers cannot afford to get that. And also a lot of Ethiopian coffees, because they're so have such great flavor and they're processed in a natural way where it's a dry process where they let the raisin or the cherry dry like a raisin around the seed. It imbues a lot of really sweet, fruity flavors into the coffees, like this blueberry flavor. So now we're at 4 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and press this coffee down. And as I do, you can see the plunger here. And you can see it moving down through the device. And I'm just going to push it all the way down, but I don't want to do it so quickly that water pressure would force some of the grinds around the filter. I want to go slowly to minimize the amount of coffee grinds that actually get up into this upper chamber. So I pressed it down all the way now, and then for this one I'm going to rotate it so it gets to the part where there's these there's an opening there for the coffee to come out. I'm going to go ahead and pour myself some of my freshly French pressed coffee from Ethiopia. And this coffee, as a French press, even though they have a filter, French press coffee will still naturally get a lot of very small microparticles of the coffee in it. So the coffee will have a little bit of a more cloudy appearance, and that's normal for French press. Wow. So there's a very strong blueberry flavor in this coffee. The ratio I used of 1 to 18 is pretty standard. But if you wanted to make this coffee more dense, more strong, you could lower that ratio. Or if you wanted to have it a little bit more diluted, more light in composition, you could then dilute it a little bit more and change that ratio. Wow. So that's a French press. I hope you guys are inspired to maybe try using a French press at home. And you can even make cold brew in a French press as well. It's the same exact process, except instead of waiting for 4 minutes, you let it sit for somewhere between 12 to 48 hours. And then you, again, just pour that out after. And you'll have a concentrated cold brew coffee, which you might want to dilute. So very handy little device. Hope you guys try our coffees. Go to cafedeparizo.com to place an order and check out this Ethiopian bean. Try that, see if you can identify that blueberry flavor, see how you like it, and join us and be the change.